Hey, first grade, and welcome back to Frog and Toad Are Friends. I hope you had fun yesterday because we're going to have some fun today reading chapter 2 together. So let's go ahead and jump right in. But before we start, I've got a joke for you because I love jokes. But not only is it a joke, it's a frog joke. How perfect, because we're reading Frog and Toad. So, are you ready for it? I'm going to have a joke for you every day, so come back for it because they're fun. All right, are you ready? How does a How does a frog feel whenever he has a broken leg? How does a frog feel when he has a broken leg? Unhappy. Get it? Like unhappy, but unhappy. Okay, good. I hope you liked it as much as I did. All right, friends. So let's jump right on in. Let's review yesterday about Frog and Toad Are Friends. Chapter 1, Spring. Let's review that. Let's talk about what happened. So, in the beginning, we know that Frog went to Toad's house. He was knocking on the door, and he was so excited. He was like, Toad, Toad, wake up, wake up. Well, did anybody answer? No, Toad didn't answer. He was like, go away, just super tired. He'd been asleep since when? November, right? He had been asleep. He was like, I'm not in the mood for this. Go away, Frog. Just leave me alone, let me sleep. Sometimes I feel like that in the mornings too, right? And he was like, no, come in. So he busted open his door and he was like, wake up, it is spring outside. It's beautiful. The sun is shining. Let's go. So he pushed him out of the bed and he pushed him out of the door and onto the front porch. And Toad said, oh man, my eyes. Oh, just like whenever we cut on the light when it's super bright. And he was like, wake me up until it's, what did he say? 1/2 May, right? So, did Frog like that? No, Frog was like, I'm going to be lonely. I don't like this. What am I going to do? So, what did he do to solve his problem? He's a thinker, right? He's a problem solver. He went over to the calendar that still said, what month? November, because that's whenever last Toad was up and at it. And he tore off December. And then he tore off January. And then February. And then March. Did he tear off April, even though it was still April? Yeah, he tore that off too. To trick Toad to wake up, and finally he was like, Toad, wake up, it's May. And he was like, already? Really? And did he get up? Yeah, he did. He walked over to the calendar. He was like, might as well. You're right. It is May. So he got up and he was super excited, and Frog and Toad went out to enjoy the spring weather. And then the story ended. Well, not the story, but the chapter ended. So today we get to see what adventures they go to. So if you will open up your table of contents to the second chapter. So we read Spring. Now we're reading the story. And it's on page 16. So if you'll flip to page 16 with me to find chapter 2, the story. And again, I am going to read it. I want you to follow along with me. Or if you want to, you can pause the video, read the chapter, and then when you're done, come back to the video and we will do the rest of the work together. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started with chapter 2 of Frog and Toad Are Friends. The story. Here we go. One day in summer, Frog was not feeling well. Toad said, Frog, you are looking quite green. But I always look green, said Frog. I am a frog. Toad, you look very green, even for a frog, said Toad. Get into my bed and rest. Toad made Frog a cup of hot tea. Frog drank the tea, and then he said, tell me a story while I'm resting. I hope Frog's not getting sick. All right, said Toad. Let me think of a story to tell you. Toad thought and thought, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. There he is thinking about it. I will go out to the front porch and walk up and down, said Toad. Perhaps that will help me think of a story. So Toad walked up and down on the porch for a long time, back and forth, pacing. But he could not think of a story to tell Frog. What's he going to do? Then Toad went into the house and stood on his head. Why are you sitting on your head? Asked Frog. I hope that if I stand on my head, it will help me think of a story, said Toad. Frog's like, are you crazy? Toad stood on his head for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. He is one crazy Toad. Then Toad poured a glass of water over his head. Why are you pouring water over your head? Said Frog. I hope that if I pour water over my head, it will help me think of a story, said Toad. Toad poured many glasses of water over his head, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Poor Toad. So then Toad began to bang his head against the wall. Boom, boom. Why are you banging your head against the wall? Said Frog. Well, I hope that if I bang my head against the wall hard enough, it will help me think of a story, said Toad. I am feeling much better now, Toad, said Frog. I don't think I need a story anymore. Then you get out of bed and let me get into it, said Toad, because now I'm feeling terrible. Frog said, would you like me to tell you a story, Toad? Yes, said Toad, if you know one. He said, of course. Once upon a time, said Frog, there were two good friends, a frog and a toad. Who do you think this story's about? Them, right? The frog was not feeling well. He asked his friend Toad to tell him a story. The toad could not think of a story. He walked up and down the porch, but he could not think of a story. He stood on his head, but he could not think of a story. He poured water over his head, but he could not think of a story. He banged his head against the wall, but he still could not think of a story. Then the toad did not feel so well, and the frog was feeling better. So the toad went to bed, and the frog got up and told him a story. The end. How was that, Toad? Said Frog. But Toad did not answer. He had, what do you think happened? Fallen asleep. That is too funny. And then that is our last chat. That's the end of the chapter before we start the third. So let's stop there because we're only reading a chapter a day. And that is too funny. I told you they were silly. That's why I like them. They have a good time together. So that was chapter 2. Don't go to chapter 3. I mean, you can if you'd like. But tomorrow we're going to do that together too. So stay with me with that. So chapter 2 was the story. And let's go ahead and open up our packets to Frog and Toad Are Friends story map. This packet to the story map. Yesterday we filled out for spring chapter 1. Today we can fill out the story chapter 2. So I'm going to bring you down here with me. And let's go ahead and get started with this. So chapter 2 was the story and we just read that. So who were the characters in this chapter? Still Frog and Toad, right? There may be more characters later. We don't know yet. But for now, it's still Frog and Toad. The setting, where were they in this story? Where were they at in this story? Whose house were they at? Do you remember? They were at... So they were in the house. I believe they were still in Toad's house because remember he was trying to get out of his bed. So we're still going to put Toad's house. They weren't going anywhere. They were trying to rest. Toad's house. All right. And what was the problem in this story? Think about it. So the chapter is called The Story. And what was the problem? Go ahead and write it down. What was the problem? Was Frog feeling well? Frog didn't look well, and so he got in the bed, but what happened? Toad couldn't think of a story, right? So I'm going to put Frog didn't look well, so he got in bed, but Toad couldn't think of a story. And I know that this is a very small box, but just do the best you can. Or if you want to summarize that, what I wrote up, you can. All right. Now, if this is the problem, what was the solution? What happened? How did they fix that problem? Well, remember what happened. Toad did all those things, and then he wasn't feeling good, but Frog started feeling better. So, Toad got to go to bed, right? So let's put Toad didn't feel well. They switched. And who told who a story? Yeah, Frog told a story. And remember, the story that he told him was the story of what had just happened, right? And to help Toad feel better, Frog told him that story, and then he got to go to bed, because after all that craziness that he did, standing on his head, pouring water on him, banging his head against the wall, I'm sure he didn't feel well, right? So Frog's like, maybe you should get in the bed and I'll tell you a story. So we're learning more and more about these characters, how Frog pretty much is kind of the calm one, and Toad is like the wild and crazy one now, right? But they're just silly, and they're great friends, and they're having fun. So what you're going to do now, the fun part gets to happen. Now that you've done your story map, you get to pull out this sheet that looks like this, and we get to have some fun. We get to make a craft together. So if you will pull this out, all right, this is what it's supposed to look like. You are going to put together, the first page has got his feet, his face, and his other foot, because they don't have hands. They have 4 feet. So those are those. You don't have to color it. You just cut it out. All right. Yours also has the eyes that you would glue on top. You can put those together. You have extra construction paper for the arms and legs. Now, the belly. For the belly, you have a green belly, and you already cut that out. But here's what we're going to do. This sheet, along the back of it, we need to fill this out, because this you're going to cut around and you're going to glue it onto the belly. Okay? So don't just leave his belly green. I want you to fill this out, so that way you can kind of make your story out of your craft. So before you start cutting and putting things together, let's go ahead and do this part together, so that way when I leave you, you can put it together and send me a picture of it. Okay? So on yours it says, Frog and Toad are friends, the story. So that's the chapter that we just read together. So we have to do a story about it. So it says, do you think Frog and Toad are good friends for each other? Yes or no? So circle yes or no. Do you think Frog and Toad are good friends for each other? Whatever you decide, tell me why. So if you say yes, they're good friends, tell me why do you think they're good friends? If you say no, they're not good friends together, tell me why you think no. This is not a right or wrong. This is your opinion. All right. So you tell me why. Now, do I want you to start a sentence with because? No, no, no. At this point, we know how to start a sentence, a complete sentence. So like I started you can pause it here if you need to. I'm going to start my sentence with, I think Frog and Toad are good friends because, and then I'm going to finish why. Now, I think they're good friends for each other because they help each other, right? Frog helped Toad when he was being silly and beating his head against the wall. He's like, whoa, 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 okay, I'm feeling better. You get in bed, right? And then Toad is a good friend for Frog because he makes him laugh, his silliness. So that's what I would write on my paper. You can choose other things. You can choose to go a different route. This is totally your option. So go ahead and write a sentence or two of why you think Frog and Toad are good friends for each other. Use a complete sentence. Once you have done that, you're going to cut this circle out, glue it onto the belly, this circle, and then you can put your frog together. All right. Now here your you can color these black for your eyeballs, it says, or you can use the white. So these are smaller than these circles. However you want to do it to put together your craft. Okay. But make sure before you do it to fill out your story of why you think Frog and Toad are good friends, and use a complete sentence, please. All right. When you're finished with it, I'd love to see it so you can take a picture and post it onto our wall. But I hope you have fun with this. And I can't wait to see what your responses were. And I hope that you are enjoying Frog and Toad with me. All right, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.